Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I want to talk about someone who's been on my mind for a long time when it comes to personal style. Kate Moss. And what I find so interesting about her is that she never really comes back into fashion, because she never actually leaves. Even when we don't name her directly, her influence is everywhere. In the way we throw on a blazer, in a simple slip dress, in that slightly undone feeling we're all chasing without always knowing why. Kate Moss style isn't about impressing anyone. It doesn't ask for attention. It's quiet, instinctive, and a little imperfect, and that's exactly why it feels so good to look at. There's nothing overly styled, nothing that feels forced, and yet somehow it always works. This video isn't about recreating her outfits piece by piece. I don't really believe in that anyway. It's more about understanding her way of dressing, the mindset behind it, and why her style still feels relevant, even now. Because once you understand that, you start dressing with more confidence and less overthinking. And that's what great style usually comes down to. For me, Kate Moss still matters because she changed how fashion looks when it's lived in, not staged. Before her, models felt very distant, very polished, very perfect, almost untouchable. Kate felt different. She looked like someone you might pass on the street, someone who just had an incredible sense of self. She wasn't performing fashion, she was just existing in it. She never relied on constant reinvention. Instead, she repeated the same shapes, the same moods, the same kinds of pieces over and over again, and somehow that repetition became her signature. It made her style feel honest. What I love most is that her outfits don't feel tied to a specific moment in time. You can look at a photo of her from the 90s, from the early 2000s, or from much later, and it still makes sense. It doesn't feel dated, it just feels like Kate. There's also a sense of comfort in the way she dresses. Real comfort. Clothes that move, clothes that feel worn in, clothes that look like they belong to her life. Nothing stiff, nothing overly precious, and I think that's something we're all craving more and more. In a time where style can feel very loud and very curated, Kate Moss is a reminder that you don't need to try so hard. You don't need to chase every trend, you just need to know what works for you and stick with it. And that, to me, is why her style still matters. It's not about nostalgia, it's about confidence, ease, and trusting your own instincts. When I think about Kate Moss style, I don't really think about clothes first. I think about attitude. Her mindset is very simple but also very rare. She dresses for herself. Not for trends, not for the moment, not to make a statement. And I think that's why her outfits always feel so natural. There's a strong sense of instinct in the way she dresses. It feels like she gets dressed without overthinking, without planning too much. Almost like she just reaches for what feels right that day. And somehow, that ease becomes the most powerful part of the look. She also doesn't chase novelty. She's not interested in looking new all the time. Instead, she repeats what she loves. The same silhouettes, the same types of layers, the same mood. And rather than feeling boring, it actually builds identity. You start recognizing her style before you even recognize her face. Another big part of her mindset is balance. There's always a contrast, something masculine mixed with something delicate, something relaxed next to something sharp. That tension is what keeps the outfit interesting without it ever feeling styled. And she knows when to stop. That's something I really admire. She doesn't add unnecessary details. If the outfit works, she leaves it alone. No extra accessories, no forced finishing touches. She lets the clothes breathe. I also think she's very comfortable with imperfection. Slightly messy hair, makeup that looks lived in, clothes that aren't pristine. Nothing feels too precious. And that makes everything feel more real, more wearable, more relatable. At the end of the day, the Kate Moss mindset is about trust. Trusting your taste, trusting repetition, trusting simplicity, and trusting that you don't need to explain your style to anyone for it to be valid. And once you understand that mindset, Dressing like Kate Moss stops being about copying her looks and starts being about building your own version of that ease. What I love about Kate Moss is that her style evolves, but it never really changes. The core stays the same. You just see it mature, soften, and refine over time. In the early 90s, Kate Moss didn't look like what a model was supposed to look like back then. And that was the point. Everything felt raw and unpolished. There was a kind of quiet rebellion in the way she dressed. Her outfits were simple, almost minimal, but never clean or sharp. There was always something a little undone. Hair that looked air-dried, makeup that barely existed, clothes that felt lived in. Slip dresses worn like everyday pieces, leather jackets that looked like they had a story. Boots that grounded everything. It wasn't about looking pretty, it was about looking real. And that honesty completely shifted fashion at the time. As we move into the late 90s and early 2000s, her style opens up and becomes more expressive, but still very instinctive. This is the era people often think of first when they picture Kate Moss. There's a strong bohemian influence mixed with that rock and roll edge. Flowing silhouettes paired with tougher elements, softness and grit living in the same outfit. Nothing feels styled for the sake of it. The looks feel collected over time, almost accidental. Vintage pieces, layered textures, scarves, belts, and dresses that move when she walks. Even when the outfits are more dramatic, they still feel effortless. She could look completely relaxed during the day and then turn around and wear something very bold at night, without ever losing that ease. And that's what makes this era so influential. It feels free, personal, and slightly rebellious, without trying to shock. This is also when her off-duty looks really start shaping fashion. Paparazzi photos become references. What she wears walking down the street suddenly matters just as much as what she wears to an event. In the last decade and beyond, her style becomes calmer, more grounded, and even more confident. You see more tailoring, more structure, but never stiffness. Blazers that feel natural on her, simple layers, neutral tones that don't ask for attention. Everything looks intentional, but still very easy. What's beautiful is that she doesn't try to reinvent herself to stay relevant. She just keeps dressing like herself. The same silhouettes, the same mood, refined with better fabrics, better fit, and more confidence. And I think that's the most inspiring part of her style evolution. It's not about transformation, it's about staying true to who you are and letting your style grow with you instead of against you. When it comes to Kate Moss, color is never the loudest part of the outfit. And I think that's very intentional. Her palette is built around tones that feel grounding and familiar. Black, white, gray, soft beiges, and warm browns show up again and again. These are colors that don't ask for attention, but they create a strong base. They let the silhouette, the texture, and the overall mood do the talking. Denim is also a big part of her palette. Not overly processed or trendy denim, but classic blues that feel worn in and natural. Denim that looks like it belongs to everyday life, not just a photo shoot. What I find interesting is that she rarely uses color to make a statement. When color does appear, it's subtle. Earthy tones, muted greens, deep reds, sometimes a soft metallic. Nothing too bright, nothing too polished. It always feels blended into the outfit rather than standing apart from it. And I love that she doesn't rely on contrast in an obvious way. There's no harsh color blocking. Everything feels slightly softened, slightly lived in. Even when she wears black or gray, it never feels sharp or severe. It feels relaxed. Her color palette also makes her style incredibly adaptable. You can mix pieces from different years, different eras, and they still work together. That's one of the reasons her wardrobe feels timeless rather than trend-based. If you're trying to channel Kate Moss style, I think the key is to choose colors that you can wear again and again without getting tired of them. Colors that feel like home. Because with her, it's never about standing out through color. It's about creating a mood that feels effortless and real. With Kate Moss, texture is everything, even more than color. Her outfits often look simple at first glance, but when you really look closer, it's the mix of fabrics that makes them interesting. She doesn't rely on prints or obvious details. She lets the materials do the work. Leather shows up a lot in her style. Soft, worn-in leather that moves with the body, not stiff or shiny. It adds that slight edge, that grounded feeling, without ever overpowering the look. Then there's silk and satin. Slip dresses, flowing tops, pieces that feel light and fluid against the skin. What I love is how she mixes these softer fabrics with heavier ones. Silk next to leather. Something delicate paired with something tougher. That contrast is very much part of her signature. Fur is also a huge part of her texture story, especially in her late 90s and early 2000s looks. Whether it's vintage fur or faux, it's never styled in an obvious or glamorous way. It's usually thrown on casually, almost like an everyday layer, which makes it feel effortless rather than dramatic. It adds warmth, richness, and that slightly rock and roll energy she's so known for. Denim is another constant. Not perfect, not overly tailored. Denim that feels lived in, broken in, like it's been worn for years. It adds an everyday ease to everything she wears. You also see a lot of wool and knit textures, especially as her style becomes more refined. Coats, blazers, and layers that add warmth and structure without feeling stiff. Everything still feels wearable, comfortable, and real. Sheer fabrics appear quietly throughout her style as well. Nothing overly dramatic, just enough transparency to add softness and a sense of movement. It never feels exposed, it just feels relaxed. What ties all of this together is that nothing feels too new or too perfect. The fabrics look like they belong to her life. They crease, they move, they age well. And that's a big reason why her outfits feel timeless rather than tied to a specific moment. If you're inspired by Kate Moss style, I think focusing on how something feels is just as important as how it looks. The texture, the weight, the way it moves when you walk. Because with her, it's always about clothes that live with you, not clothes that wear you. When people try to dress like Kate Moss, they often look for specific items. But what really makes her style work isn't the pieces themselves, it's how consistently she returns to the same ideas. The blazer is a big one. Slightly oversized, relaxed, never too sharp. It's not there to look powerful or polished, it's there to add structure without effort. She wears it like a second skin. Then there's the slip dress. Simple, fluid, often worn in the most casual way possible. It's never styled to look overly elegant. It's just a base, something she can throw on and live in. Skinny or slim-fit jeans are another constant. Not trend-driven, not exaggerated. Just jeans that sit close to the body and feel familiar. She wears them endlessly, with different layers on top, proving how powerful a simple, well-loved pair of jeans can be. Mini shorts show up throughout her style too, especially in her more boho rock moments. Paired with heavier layers, boots, vests, or jackets, they never feel overly styled. They feel relaxed, almost accidental. Outerwear plays a huge role in her looks. Coats, jackets, layers that immediately set the mood. Fur coats in particular are iconic for her. Whether vintage or faux, she throws them on casually, letting the texture speak for itself. Leather jackets are just as important, soft and worn in, adding edge without trying too hard. Boots ground almost every outfit. Knee-high boots especially add strength and attitude, even when the rest of the look is simple or minimal. They give weight to the outfit and keep everything balanced. And then there are sunglasses. Not as an accessory, but almost as part of her identity. They give her that slightly distant, cool energy, and they complete the outfit without effort. What's important is that she repeats these elements. She doesn't chase novelty. She builds a wardrobe around pieces that feel familiar and reliable. And that repetition is exactly what makes her style recognizable. Kate Moss' hair and makeup never feel like the focus, but they're a huge part of the overall effect. Her hair almost always looks untouched, soft waves, a bit messy, sometimes imperfect in the best way. It doesn't look freshly styled, and that's intentional. It feels lived in, like she didn't spend too much time thinking about it. Makeup is very similar. The skin looks natural. There's rarely anything heavy or overly defined. Sometimes there's a slightly smudged eye, sometimes barely anything at all. Lips are usually kept simple. What I love is that her beauty never looks separate from her clothes. It's all part of the same mood. Nothing feels too finished, too polished, or too controlled. There's a confidence in allowing things to be a little undone, and that's something many people forget. Trying too hard to look effortless usually does the opposite. Kate just lets things be, and that's the key. Hair and makeup are there to support the outfit, not compete with it. Dressing like Kate Moss today isn't about recreating her 90s looks or copying specific outfits from photos. It's about keeping things simple and trusting your instincts more than trends. Choosing pieces you can wear again and again, letting repetition become part of your style instead of something you avoid. It's also about contrast, mixing something soft with something strong, something relaxed with something structured. That balance is what makes her outfits feel interesting without being loud. Another important part is knowing when to stop. Not adding too many details, not over-accessorizing, letting the outfit breathe. And maybe most importantly, it's about comfort, real comfort. Clothes you can move in, live in, and feel like yourself in. If you take one thing from her style, let it be this. You don't need more clothes, you need more confidence in the ones you already love. Because at the end of the day, Kate Moss isn't a trend. She's a mindset. And that mindset will always feel relevant. Kate Moss's festival style is one of the most influential parts of her fashion legacy. Not because it's tidy or polished, but because it feels utterly real and lived in. She's been a regular at Glastonbury since the early 90s, long before festivals became a fashion moment, and her looks from those years still get referenced today. Her festival outfits are grounded in practicality, but never boring. Think denim cutoffs paired with boots that could handle mud, hunter wellies with unexpected pieces like metallic dresses, and skinny jeans tucked into tall rubber boots that look cool even in rain or grass. There's a boho rock energy to Festival Kate that feels very personal rather than curated. You'll see pieces that feel collected over time, denim shorts with a simple top, a waistcoat added on instinctively, a scarf tied loosely, a belt slung low, and all of it balanced with footwear and outerwear that actually works in an unpredictable outdoor setting. Some of her most memorable festival moments mix unexpected elements. A metallic mini dress worn with wellies, a bandana or scarf tied carelessly, a leather jacket thrown over something soft, or vintage boots and accessories layered without effort. What I love about her festival style is that she never treats it like a costume. Nothing is over-styled. Nothing looks like it was planned by a stylist. She dresses like herself, rock and roll, a bit gritty, always comfortable, and that's why people still try to capture that mood decades later. Kate Moss's red carpet and party style feels like the most natural extension of who she already is. It's elevated, yes, but never transformed. When she steps into an event space, she doesn't suddenly become more polished or more dramatic. She brings the same instinctive, relaxed energy she has in her everyday style, just with a slightly sharper edge. That's what makes her looks feel memorable without ever feeling forced. Her choices are surprisingly varied. Sometimes it's a long, fluid silhouette that feels quietly elegant. Other times it's a short dress, something playful, something that feels almost thrown on. Even when there's sparkle or shine, it never takes over. The outfit still feels light, easy, and very much her. What really ties her red carpet and party looks together is how she finishes them. She almost always grounds the look with outerwear. Fur or leather, thrown over the shoulders or worn casually, never styled too carefully. That final layer takes the look out of occasion wear territory and pulls it back into her world. A sleek dress paired with a fur coat suddenly feels relaxed. A delicate look finished with a leather jacket feels tougher, cooler, more real. It's that contrast that keeps her from looking overly styled, even at the most formal events. At parties especially, this approach feels very clear. She dresses for movement, for being comfortable, for enjoying herself. And that's why her red carpet moments last. Not because they're loud or theatrical, but because they feel honest. She shows up as herself, adds just enough elevation, and then lets her confidence do the rest. When it comes to building outfits like Kate Moss, I think the biggest shift is moving away from copying and toward understanding. She always starts with a very simple base. Something easy, something familiar. Nothing that already feels like a statement. Then she adds one element that slightly changes the energy. Something masculine, something edgy, something unexpected. And that one detail does all the work. She doesn't stack layers of interest. She chooses one direction and commits to it. What's just as important is knowing when to stop. She doesn't keep adding. If the outfit works, she lets it be. No extra accessories, no unnecessary layers, no last-minute fixes. And I think that's where most people get it wrong. We tend to overthink. We want the outfit to feel complete, finished, impressive. Kate Moss lets the outfit breathe. There's space. There's ease. If you take anything from her approach, let it be this. Start simple, add one strong idea, and then step back. Because with her, the magic is always in what she chooses not to add. I think the reason Kate Moss' style feels eternal is because it was never built on rules to begin with. She didn't dress to fit into a category, a trend, or a moment in time. She dressed from instinct, from feeling, from knowing what worked for her and trusting that enough to repeat it again and again. There's a quiet confidence in that kind of simplicity. When you stop trying to impress and start dressing for yourself, everything shifts. The clothes feel lighter, getting dressed feels easier, and your style starts to feel more like an extension of who you are, not something you put on. Kate Moss reminds us that great style doesn't need constant reinvention. It doesn't need excess. It needs clarity, a sense of self, and the confidence to stick with what feels right, even when trends move on. And maybe that's the most important takeaway here. You don't need to become Kate Moss to be inspired by her. You just take the parts that resonate with you and leave the rest behind. Adapt, don't imitate. Build your own version of ease. Trust your instincts a little more, because in the end, the Kate Moss effect isn't about clothes at all. It's about confidence, and that will always be in style. If you enjoyed this video and it made you think a little differently about personal style, I'd love it if you stayed around. You can like the video, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you took from Kate Moss's style, or which part of her approach resonates with you the most. And if there's another style icon you'd like me to explore next, definitely tell me. I always love hearing your thoughts and ideas. Thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me. I'll see you in the next one.